Well, hi, and welcome back to another episode of Everybody Loves Politics. I'm your host, Tom Bullington, and today on the show, we're going to have a very special episode. You know, the best thing about campaigns is campaign advertising on television, right? Everyone loves when a campaign ad comes on TV. They hush the room and they want to watch those campaign TV ads, right? Well, maybe not. In my house, they do. So what we're going to do is take a retrospective look back on this episode, clear back to 1960 when John F. Kennedy was running against Richard Nixon. Here is a clip from Kennedy and Nixon, 1960.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know
and young enough to do.
Well, it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
What is the most important issue confronting the American people in this election campaign? There's no question about the answer that I have found in traveling all over this nation. Above everything else, the American people want leaders who will keep the peace without surrender for America and the world.
Vote for Nixon and Lodge, November 8th.
So in 1964, President Johnson ran against Arizona Republican Senator Barry Goldwater, very conservative and known as the godfather of the modern Republican Party. Let's take a look and see what Johnson and Goldwater were running in 1964.
His moral responsibility out of style, our papers and our newsreels, and yes, our own observations tell us that immorality surrounds us as never before. We see violence in the streets, in our cities and suburbs, graft and corruption in the highest public offices to which we look for leadership, when scandal in local and national government has become so commonplace that many begin to consider it a way of life. Then I say that we, as a nation, are not far from the kind of moral decay that has brought on the fall of other nations and people. The philosophy of something for nothing, the cult of individual and government irresponsibility, is an insidious cancer that will destroy us as a people unless we recognize it and root it out now. I say it is time to put conscience back in government, and by good example, put it back in all walks of American life.
In your heart, you know he's right. Vote for Barry Goldwater.
When somebody tells you he's for Barry Goldwater, you ask him which Barry Goldwater he's for. Is he for the one who said, we must make the fullest possible use of the United Nations? Or is he for the one who said, the United States no longer has a place in the UN? Is he for the Barry who said, I seek the support of no extremist? Or is he for the one who said, extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice? And how is a Republican supposed to indicate on his ballot which Barry he's voting for? There's only one Lyndon Johnson. Vote for him on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
So as you may remember, 1968 was a very tumultuous election. There were riots at the Democratic Convention in Chicago in 1968. And Hubert H. Humphrey from Minnesota was running to be president. He was vice president at the time, running against Richard Nixon. As you may remember, Nixon won the election, but it didn't turn out so well for Nixon after all.
What has to be done by President and people together, or it won't be done at all. I am asking not that you give something to your country, but that you do something with your country. I am asking not for your gifts, but for your hands. Together we can hardly fail, for there is no force on earth to match the will and spirit of the people of America.
So in 1972, President Nixon was running for re-election against Democratic Senator George McGovern from South Dakota. One of the biggest blowouts in modern American political history. I think 48 states Nixon won in that election. And it's probably most notable for not the outcome of the election, but what was going on behind the scenes at that election when President Nixon ordered the break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters. Something you may have heard of, it's called Watergate.
This is about the government. This is about credibility. This is about electronics. This is about bugging. This is about spying. This is about thievery. This is about deception. This is about the White House. And this is how you stop it. With your vote.
Reaching out to find a way to make tomorrow a brighter day, making dreams reality. More than ever, Nixon now for you and me. Nixon now, Nixon now. He's made the difference. He's shown us how. Nixon now, Nixon now. More than ever, Nixon now. Listen, America, Nixon now.
Reaching out across the sea, making friends where those used to be, giving hope to humanity. More than ever, Nixon now for you and me.
Nixon now, Nixon now. He's made the difference. He's shown us how. Nixon now, Nixon now. More than ever, Nixon now. Listen, America, Nixon now. Nixon now, Nixon now. He's made the difference. He's shown us how. Nixon now, Nixon now. More than ever, Nixon now. Nixon now, Nixon now. Listen, America, Nixon now.
So in 1976, President Ford, after the resignation and humiliation of Richard Nixon, ran for election. He was the first president to ever be president, not winning any elections for either vice president or president. Richard Nixon's vice president was also ousted from office during that administration. So President Ford was kind of out there in new territory, running against little-known governor from Georgia, Jimmy Carter.
We've seen walls built around Washington, and we feel like we can't quite get through to guarantee the people of this country a government that's sensitive to our needs, that we can understand and control, that's competent, well-managed, efficient, economical, purposeful, and also a government of which we can be proud.
Jimmy Carter, a leader for a change. He was an Eagle Scout. He was an honor student. He was the most valuable player at Michigan. He was graduated in the top third of Yale Law School while holding a full-time job. He served courageously in World War II. He led his party in the Congress. And in 2 short years as president, he has brought us peace, helped turn the economy around, and made us feel proud again. Gerald Ford has always been best when the going was toughest. Let's keep him in charge.
So as we entered the 1980s, President Carter was highly unpopular, and he was running against someone that people had been familiar with for years, both in the entertainment world and as governor of California and perennial presidential candidate for the Republican Party, someone named Ronald Reagan.
To me, caring is when a president understands how vital it is to protect you from inflation. Inflation is the enemy of everyone living on fixed incomes. A president who says he cares but allows inflation to rob you of your savings, well, to me, that's not caring. We can control inflation. We did it in California, and we can do it for America.
The time is now for Reagan. Reagan.
Well, I felt that Ronald Reagan wasn't too good for education in California when he was governor.
I don't think Reagan showed enough compassion for the people of California.
What he did with the mental hospitals is a crime.
He made a lot of statements about cutting back spending. He really never did.
It's already common knowledge that he doubled our tax rate.
I don't know of anything he did for the state.
When it comes to a choice, I'll take Jimmy Carter.
I voted for President Carter in the primary. I voted for him 4 years ago, and I'll vote for him again.
On November 4th, re-elect President Carter.
So in 1984, you may remember that Walter Mondale, who was vice president of Jimmy Carter, got the Democratic nomination and ran against a very popular Ronald Reagan.
It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates and inflation down, more people are buying new homes, and our new families can have confidence in the future. America today is prouder and stronger and better. Why would we want to return to where we were less than 4 short years ago?
Teach your parents well. Their children's hell will slowly go by. Don't you ever ask them why. If they told you, you would cry. So just look at them and sigh. And know they love you. Who are on the road.
The future stands before us. We must choose which kind it will be. A future with killer weapons orbiting above us, or the promise of a better future. It's not too late if we act now.
I say it's time for new leadership. It's time for America to move on.
Draw the line at the heavens on Election Day. No weapons in space by either side.
So in 1988, the summer of 1988, Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis was 15 points ahead of then Vice President George H.W. Bush. Everyone thought at the time that Michael Dukakis would be the next president of the United States.
His fellow governors voted him the most effective governor in America. The son of Greek immigrants, he served his country in Korea. And inspired by a young president named Kennedy, he chose public service. 15 years later, Michael Dukakis became governor of Massachusetts. With the determination of a marathon runner, he wiped out huge budget deficits, cracked down on corruption, cut taxes, and led an economic turnaround they call a miracle. Committed to making the American dream come true for everyone, he invested in daycare, job training, and education, and brought jobs and a future to people in need, including 40,000 welfare mothers. Strength, innovation, caring. A quarter century of making a real difference in the lives of real people. Mike Dukakis, a president for the 90s.
As governor, Michael Dukakis vetoed mandatory sentences for drug dealers. He vetoed the death penalty. His revolving door prison policy gave weekend furloughs to first-degree murderers not eligible for parole. While out, many committed other crimes like kidnapping and rape, and many are still at large. Now Michael Dukakis says he wants to do for America what he's done for Massachusetts. America can't afford that risk.
So in 1992, we had a very interesting election. President Bush was running for re-election. He was at 91% in the polls following the Desert Storm War against Saddam Hussein to drive him out of Kuwait. 91% still ended up losing the 1992 re-election bid to President Bill Clinton. But the thing that people may recall was there was a third candidate in that election, billionaire from Texas, Ross Perot. Makes you think about how Donald Trump is catching fire this year and wondering if Trump would be a third-party candidate this time if he doesn't get the Republican nomination. So let's take a look at Perot, Clinton, and Bush from 1992.
Perot, on voting your conscience.
If you want to rebuild the job base, let your vote say so. If you want a government that comes from the people instead of at the people, let your vote say so. If you want to reduce our $4 trillion national debt, let your vote say so. Look at the issues, look at the facts, look at all three candidates, and then vote your conscience.
Ross Perot for president.
The welfare system has got to be reformed. I favor reformed welfare. The victims of the current system are the welfare recipients themselves. And I'm not opposed to welfare, but I'm opposed to the existing system that strips every recipient of his dignity. And I want to restore that dignity by giving him a chance to work, giving him a chance to give him a shot at the American dream.
Something's happening out there, a feeling. Call it hope, that our country can move in a new direction, that the future is something to look forward to, not fear. If that's what you're feeling, you may have noticed something else. You're not alone.
Amazingly, in 1992, Ross Perot got 19% of the popular vote. In 96, he got about 6 or 7% of the popular vote, just enough to swing the balance of the election back over to Clinton. Clinton never got a majority for president in either election, 92 or 96. So speaking of 96, Senator from Kansas, Bob Dole, ran against President Clinton at the time. And it was never close. Bill Clinton never really lost any sort of a lead. Things were going well. The nation was at peace, which is hard to imagine today, but there were no major conflicts happening in the world. The economy was booming, and Bob Dole really had a hard time making the case that there needed to be change in the countries. Going into the 2000 election, which of course is one of the most contentious elections in American history with the Electoral College debate and the Supreme Court being involved. And it was actually a good thing for America to see that the Electoral College, whether you love it or hate it, that's who elects the president. It's the Electoral College. President Bush won more electoral votes in Florida, and that tipped the balance to President George W. Bush.
Government has made a commitment, and you have made your plans. These promises will be honored.
George Bush's plan strengthens Social Security. It guarantees everyone at or near retirement every dollar of their benefits. No cuts in Social Security. And the Bush plan gives younger workers the choice to put a small part of their Social Security in sound investments they control for higher returns.
This generation will save Social Security.
Strengthening education begins with us, not with government. Parents simply have to get involved and take responsibility to make sure that their children study and learn. But government has to take responsibility for what it can do. Fix failing schools, reduce the class size, set high standards for students and for teachers. We're in an information age. We have a responsibility to make sure that our schools are the very best in the entire world.
But George W. Bush won re-election, won Ohio, won Florida as well, and there was no dispute. There was no Electoral College challenge. There was nothing like that. In 2004, George W. Bush won re-election, and actually got more votes than the other guy.
I'm George W. Bush, and I approve this message. I'm optimistic about America because I believe in the people of America.
After recession, 9/11, and war, now our economy has been growing for 10 straight months. The largest tax relief in history. 1.4 million jobs added since August. Inflation, interest, and mortgage rates low. Record home ownership. John Kerry's response? He's talking about the Great Depression. One thing sure, pessimism never created a job.
He was born in an Army hospital in Colorado. His father was an Army Air Corps pilot. His mother, a community leader. He went to college at Yale and volunteered to serve in Vietnam.
The decisions that he made saved our lives. When he pulled me out of the river, he risked his life to save mine.
In combat, he earned the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, and 3 Purple Hearts. Then he came home determined to end that war. For more than 30 years, John Kerry has served America. As a tough prosecutor, he fought for victims' rights. In the Senate, he was a leader in the fight for health care for children. He joined with John McCain to find the truth about POWs and MIAs in Vietnam. He broke with his own party to support a balanced budget. Then in the 1990s, cast a decisive vote that created 20 million new jobs. A lifetime of service and strength. John Kerry for President.
I'm John Kerry, and I approve this message.
But 2008 will always be known as the Obama versus Clinton election. Hillary started out eons ahead of President Obama and Senator Obama at the time. And Obama won Iowa. Iowa was the pivotal part of that election. They went back and forth. Hillary won New Hampshire, and then Obama would win another state, and then Hillary would win another state. Let's take a look at what Obama and McCain did, as well as Hillary Clinton back in 2008.
It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. But there's a phone in the White House and it's ringing. Something's happening in the world. Your vote will decide who answers that call. Whether it's someone who already knows the world's leaders, knows the military, someone tested and ready to lead in a dangerous world. It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. Who do you want answering the phone?
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
We are one people, all of us pledging allegiance to the Stars and Stripes.
After college and law school, Barack Obama could have cashed in. Instead, he fought for change, working to rebuild an area torn apart by plant closings.
It was inspiring, absolutely inspiring, to see someone as brilliant as Barack Obama take all of the talent and devote it to making people's lives better.
In Illinois, he brought Republicans and Democrats together, cutting taxes for workers and winning health care for children.
Senator Obama worked on some of the deepest issues we had, and he was successful in a bipartisan way.
And in the U.S. Senate, he's led on issues from arms control to landmark ethics reform.
It was hard to get that ethics bill passed. This is a man who knows how to get things done. He understands that we've got to move forward with a different kind of politics.
There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America.
The last 8 years haven't worked very well, have they? I'll make the next 4 better. Your savings, your job, and your financial security are under siege. Washington is making it worse, bankrupting us with their spending, telling us paying higher taxes is patriotic, and saying we need to spread the wealth around. They refuse common sense solutions for energy independence. So every day we send billions to the Middle East. We need a new direction, and I have a plan. Your savings, we'll rebuild them. Your investments, they'll grow again. Energy, we'll drill here and we'll create a renewable energy economy. Lower taxes and less spending will protect your job and create new ones. That'll restore our country. Stand up with me. Let's fight for America. I'm John McCain, and I approve this message.
Former Massachusetts Governor Republican Mitt Romney, who lost the nomination in 2008 to John McCain, he ran again in 2012 and got the nomination to unseat President Obama.
Too many Americans are struggling to find work in today's economy. Too many of those who are working are living paycheck to paycheck, trying to make falling incomes meet rising prices for food and gas. More Americans are living in poverty than when President Obama took office, and 15 million more are on food stamps. President Obama and I both care about poor and middle-class families. The difference is My policies will make things better for them. We shouldn't measure compassion by how many people are on welfare. We should measure compassion by how many people are able to get off welfare and get a good paying job. My plan will create 12 million new jobs over the next 4 years, helping lift families out of poverty and strengthening the middle class. I'm Mitt Romney, and I approve this message because we can't afford another 4 years like the last 4 years.
One thing Americans have had in common for the past 240 years is that we don't especially like to be told what to do. It's why the great majority of us are here, after all. Our families decided wherever they were was less desirable than an uncertain future here in the United States. Similarly, American voters don't like to be told that certain candidates are inevitable, and that if we identify with a political party, we should just fall in line behind them, pledge allegiance, and then, of course, send in our donations to the machine working to put them into office. Now this year, both candidates once considered their party's presumptive nominees, Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton, have run into a bit of turbulence on their way to the general election. Nowhere is this more evident than on the Republican side, where 17 candidates threw their hats into the ring, including billionaire real estate mogul and reality show star Donald Trump. Bush, in spite of his money, experience, and political pedigree, you may remember his dad and brother were both president of the United States, has sputtered and failed to gain significant traction. Meanwhile, the Democrats have not exactly been unified either. Self-avowed Democratic socialist, Senator Bernie Sanders has been very competitive with Clinton in the first two contests, Iowa and New Hampshire, and has gained a significant national following. Now, this is not entirely without precedent. In 1992, incumbent President George H.W. Bush experienced a strong challenge in the New Hampshire primary from fellow Republican and media commentator Pat Buchanan. You may recall Buchanan received 37% of the vote in that state and went on to garner between 10 and 35% in the contest that followed, just enough to be a pain in Bush's side for months. Fast forward 36 years, and the two candidates generating the most popular support and largest crowds are not the two that were previously anointed as inevitable. Both Trump and Bernie Sanders represent the disaffected voters telling us loud and clear that they don't like what's going on both in the country, but also in their respective political parties. At least at this point in the process, voters still aren't quite sure what they want, but they certainly know what they don't want, and that's someone telling them that things have already been decided. Ultimately, the candidates who successfully tap into that disaffection with the two-party system will prevail, and it's going to be fun to watch.